Welcome to this local church learning session from United Methodist Communications that will help you provide alternative ways of giving that is outside of the offering plate on Sunday morning, and will help you educate and encourage your church members to continue practicing extravagant generosity. We will also discuss why connectional giving is still important, even in this time of crisis around the world. This video is part of a series of learning sessions that are aimed to help your church in using technology to connect with your congregation and the community, even when you're not able to be physically present together. These sessions are timely for right now, but should still be useful in the future, as we should all be intentional on reaching new people in new ways. My name is Stephen Adair, and I'm the Director of Local Church Services at United Methodist Communications. And I'm joined today by Brandy Bivens, Director of Communications and Marketing at the General Counsel on Finance and Administration, and Linda Bruner, Senior Manager of Connectional Giving Marketing at United Methodist Communications. So let's jump right in. So a lot of churches are worried about giving. Without a physical offering plate to pass around, what can churches do?
Yeah, so first, I want to say thank you to UMCOM for inviting GCFA here to talk about such an important thing. And the first thing I would tell people is that everyone is worried. All the churches across the country are in the same boat, worried about a decline in those Sunday offerings. But there's a couple of easy steps that you can do now. The easiest answer here is simple: communicate. This is a situation where you really want to over-communicate and make sure your audience knows how and why they should still contribute to your ministry. So the first thing you can do is old-fashioned communication. Have your pastor or your finance chair send a letter, an email, or a postcard about what your church is doing during this time of social distancing. Make sure your audience knows. Are you doing a Facebook Live? Are you doing a drive-in church? Are you holding worship by Zoom? Make sure they know how to attend your services. Be sure to include details, or better yet, a point person if they need technological help on Sunday or Wednesdays or whenever. Once you communicate how your worship is happening, make sure you include information about options on how they can give. The second thing you can do is spread the message on social media. Consider having your finance chair or your pastor film a short video about why the ministry needs funding. You can upload it to your website and across all of your social media platforms. Make sure that the message is public and shareable so individual members of your congregation can share it out as well. And then the last thing you can do in terms of old-fashioned communication and giving is your website. Make sure you have a giving page on your church's website, even if you don't have online giving. Make sure they know how they can give a check or how they could continue giving cash. Tell them how you're accepting contributions and provide instructions and a point person to call. Invite feedback and tell people to be sure to call if they have questions.
Definitely. So there are multiple ways out there for a church or a local ministry to receive funds. Are there recommended ways, or if a church hasn't participated in electronic giving thus far, how would they get started?
Sure. So there are multiple ways a church can receive gifts from a variety of sources. And some of your members are going to want to still pay by check, and that's certainly an option. Let your congregation know how they can send checks. Is it through the mail? Some churches have locked boxes on the outside or just inside their building. If they want to do a physical drop-off, just make sure your location is secure. In other words, make sure a staff member is monitoring the mail or that drop-off location. But you can go beyond the traditional offering plate and checks and cash with bank account checks and transfers. And it's likely that your congregation is already paying some of their bills electronically. So an ACH or EFT transfer is an easy bank-to-bank option. In that case, funds go directly from the giver's institution into your church's account. And the best part is that this transfer can be set up on a recurring basis. So people can set up to give weekly or monthly. And that's a great habit that can get check writers into, that you can get your check writers into. And that can help a little bit with your finance committee trying to figure out a steady income source. So your bank can provide you with that form. And in fact, banks are a great resource for you at this time. Call up your institution and ask them how they can help you get started in this. You can put a sample ACH EFT form up on your website, or you can mail or email out this form to your givers and let them know that this option exists. But be sure to have a system in place for recording these gifts in your accounting mechanisms.
Awesome. So checks and electronic transfers are a great way for churches to get started. Many of us have heard about electronic giving. Can you explain what that is and how it works?
Absolutely. So you've probably heard about eGiving or electronic giving, online giving, and it's exactly what it sounds like. But it does come in many forms. There's mobile apps, online giving, text to give, the list can go on. So let's take just a few minutes and cover each one of these. Online giving is exactly what it sounds like. If your church has a website, you can consider taking funds online. You should have your link to give prominently displayed on your giving site on your website. So the first place you can check into this option is with your church's website provider. They might have a preferred company, or they might have a giving plugin that can be added to your website pretty easily. But there are dozens of online giving platforms for churches. Some are specifically geared for churches and some aren't. Some of the big players that aren't geared for churches but are more generic are things like PayPal. But some of the ones that are geared toward churches include EasyTithe, Tidely, Banco, EasyTithe. Some companies are only the front-facing online giving platform, and you still might need a payment processor. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But a lot of the companies do both. They give you both the web page to put up as well as process your funds. Now, the first thing that you should make sure you understand about any online giving provider is their fees. If their fees aren't transparent or you don't fully understand the fee structure from that company, you can feel free to move on. The fees generally fall into three categories. The first is a setup fee. Many companies may be waiving this right now, so feel free to ask. If they pitch it to you as a discount during social distancing, be sure to ask what that fee normally is. Many of the bigger players don't have a setup fee normally, so it might not be a true discount just because of what we're going through. So again, the first one is setup fees. The second one is a monthly fee. This is how some companies make their money. So rather than charge a fee per transaction, they charge a monthly fee regardless of how much money is coming in. Now, some companies might have a monthly fee on a sliding scale based on the amount of donations being processed. So some companies might not have any monthly fees. Some companies it might be $30 or $50, but that may be regardless of how much money is coming in. So we've covered setup fees and monthly fees. The third fee that you should look out for is a fee per transaction. Some companies have a flat rate on fees per transaction. It might be 1.5% of your transaction. It might be 2% or 3% of your transaction. Now, some companies also charge additional fees for credit cards, separate than just processing a check or something like that. So you need to make sure and ask about specific credit card fee transaction fees as well. They might be higher on some credit cards like American Express or Discover. So that's something to ask as well. And then the next thing that you want to keep in mind with these online giving companies is your turnaround time. Something to ask any e-giving vendor is how immediately funds can be accessed. Now, you may not need the funds for 2 or 3 days, and so that's just going to depend on your personal situation. but some companies might hold the funds for 3 or 4 business days before getting them processed. So just something for you to keep in mind. Now, many of these online giving vendors have additional add-ons like text giving, mobile giving apps. And a mobile giving app is attractive for many churches, as your members can enter their credit card or banking info one time on their phone. And then every time they want to give, all they have to do is go in that phone, pick up the app, say how much they want to give, and they don't have to constantly enter in their financial information. Mobile apps can be standalone options, or they can be bundled with online giving. You just need to figure out what's right for your audience. Again, even on mobile apps, be sure to check those fees we talked about: startup fees, the monthly fees, and transaction fees, as well as the turnaround time. Now, another option that falls in this electronic giving is text giving. It's another added benefit that some of these companies offer, or there's standalone options that are just only do text giving. Now, typically what happens is you're going to give your members a 5 or 6 digit number and a predefined keyword, right? So your keyword might be McKendree Gives or Glendale United, or whatever the case may be. The companies will work with you to set up those keywords. Again, check fees and pricing. Now, social media also exists as options for online giving. I would tell you to be wary of these options. Now, Facebook for churches waives processing fees, but churches still have to choose a payment processor that also charges those fees. So Facebook will take a cut. Your payment processor also will. And Facebook, it can be up to 2 weeks at a minimum before you get your funds. So be sure to use Facebook and other social media, though, to spread your message about giving options.
So just to play off of that, I've set up my local United Methodist Church on Facebook donations, and it does take 2 weeks to get it. It's kind of a calendar, the 1st through the 15th. You get it, I think, the 1st or 2nd week of the next month, and then the 2nd, it does take a while. But the process to set that up is quite challenging, I came to find. We actually had to ask for a letter from our conference treasurer that we were a part of the denominational structure as a, I guess, official entity of the Tennessee Conference. So as you're going through that process, if you do, because we do use that for my local church on giving, especially with these online services that we've been having the last few weeks, to add that donation feature on our web service to make it easy for somebody to just hit that donate button and send us their contribution. But just that as they go through that process, they need to know that they might have to reach out to their conference office to get extra documentation, so Facebook will approve them as a official nonprofit. So just to put that out there, it is doable, but it will take some extra work.
Yeah, and Stephen, if I could also let our viewership know that GCFA does run a site called umgroupruling.org, where GCFA has obtained an umbrella ruling from the IRS where Methodist churches are all under that. So you can go into umgroupruling.org and sign your church up, and you can get a letter that then you could turn into Facebook or other giving entities that need to be aware of your nonprofit status. So that's an option apart from the annual conference as well, but annual conference is certainly a great option.
Well, and I think that it might actually take both, because when I was setting that up, I did actually use that group ruling letter from GCFA at that website. And it took explaining, like a letter explaining kind of how the UMC is set up, just because Facebook just doesn't know our structure.
Got it.
But just kind of took that extra nudge. But maybe I know more churches have been signing up for that feature, so maybe it won't take that much work for your church if you sign up. But I do want to I share that because it did take some extra effort to get us classified as an official nonprofit for that feature. So just know it might take some extra steps there. But anyway, our next question is that if you just really actually, if you have any more advice or tips and tricks to share with our local churches.
Yeah, so Stephen actually covered the first one, and that is anytime you are ready to start with a online giving vendor, whether that's true online giving, website giving, or text to give, you'll want to be sure to have all of your information at your fingertips. So that includes your nonprofit status, likely to includes an EIN number, as well as your bank info. There's a few more things to keep in mind as it relates to online giving. If you do participate in online giving through your website, make sure your website is secure, meaning you need what is called an SSL certificate, secure socket layer. You'll know it because when you enter in your website address, it should be HTTPS, as in secure, not just HTTP. If you have questions around that, you don't know if your site's secure or not, you can call your website provider. The second thing to do is if you do begin online giving, be sure to call your insurance agent. And that's not something everybody really thinks about or associates with this. But cyber theft is a real and growing concern. Now, millions of Americans process bank bills, contributions online. So there is a way to do it securely, and don't let that scare you off. But you need to make sure that your insurance agent or carrier let them know that you're going to be taking these funds, and make sure that your coverage includes cyber theft, and know your limit of how much coverage you might need or you might have, or whether it's excluded. And third and finally, make sure you're practicing good internal controls when it comes to banking and accounting. Make sure you know who in your staff has access, where the passwords are kept, and that all information, whether it is logins and passwords or whether it is contributor information, make sure that's kept securely and confidentially.
Awesome. That was a lot of information. I do want to just share that these sessions, and this session is part of a whole library of learning sessions, but that this will still be available after this premieres live for the first time. So if you have missed something to write down or some notes, just know that it will still be, wherever you're watching it right now, it will still live there on into the future, so you can refer back to it. So Linda, what does connectional giving mean, and how is it relevant during a crisis like this one that we are currently experiencing?
And it's good to follow eGiving, because now that you understand the eGiving process, it's easier to understand the connectional giving side. And connectional giving is something that a lot of people are just like, that's not something we want to focus on right now, but I'm glad that we have an opportunity to talk about it. Connectionalism in just the word itself it's used often in the United Methodist Church, but it's very much often misunderstood. So if we look at the Book of Discipline, it defines it as a vital web of interactive relationships. And there's a whole depth of formality of the institution of the United Methodist Church and the connection. But I really want to focus on the strength that comes from being part of a larger web of relationships. Basically, our network of being connected together by relationships. So one of the relational ways that we connect is through our giving. We faithfully participate in the life of our ministries, of our local congregation through, and you'll recognize this, our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and witness. And when we speak into those vows, we know that we're connected through those multiple ways. And one of those ways is gifts or generosity. And that's one of the actions that we perform. So the church is always called to be present in calm and in chaotic times. And right now we feel off kilter, where it's a chaotic time. So when crises occur, the church has almost always been very generous. So I want to remind people that generosity is a choice, and everyone deserves the opportunity to make a choice to be generous. So let me use a metaphor to kind of explain how the giving and how generosity really works together as a value. We'll use the visual of a rock avalanche. If we have a friend who was trapped underneath a ton of rocks, one of us, just one individual, could not move all those rocks. But millions of us together can come together and we can move the rocks. Not only can we move the rocks, we can do it quickly. When we all pitch in together with one goal, we're able to achieve it by lifting small rocks as well as coming together to lift the big rocks. So continuing along that line of thinking, this is how our money works within the connection of our funding the ministries. When you give in your local church, the United Methodist Church divides that into many different pieces, and it travels in many different places. It generally goes to support 3 different significant areas: your local church, the general or jurisdictional church funds, the ministries of your annual conference. And if we break down just $1 out of your offering, kind of look like this. 85 cents stays within your local church to fund all the ministries your local church does. 7 cents would go to support your annual conference, your district and jurisdictional ministries. 6 cents would go to benevolent giving or second mile giving. And then 2 cents would go to apportionments. And of course, the next question is always, what is second mile giving or apportionments or benevolent giving? So we'll start with second mile giving. Second mile comes from Matthew 5:41-42. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also a second. Give to anyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. So together as United Methodist, we have agreed to support 6 special Sundays that fund different ministries. There's Human Relations Day, Core Sunday, Native American Ministry Sunday, Peace with Justice Sunday, World Communion Sunday, and United Methodist Student Day. It also covers the Advance, Youth Service Fund, and any special appeals that have been approved by the church. Apportionments are, and a lot of people talk about apportionments lately, and that's what we really consider our first mile missional giving. And it's based on formulas developed within each annual conference, and each church pays a set apportionment to support mission that we've all again agreed upon. These are the things that we want to make sure that are first covered, and those would be our 7 apportion funds: Africa University, Black College Fund, Episcopal Fund, General Administration Fund, Interdenominational Cooperation Fund, Ministerial Education Fund, and our World Service Fund. I know that's a lot.
I gotcha. So most are probably not aware that there are so many giving opportunities available through our connection.
Right.
How can churches speak into each of these funds and make sure their congregations understand what each of these funds represent?
And that is where my team comes in. The Connectional Giving team creates resources that will explore each giving opportunity that's available, what it means, why we support it, and we have a huge range of resources around us. We have digital and print resources. Obviously, those digital resources in times like this would be very helpful. So when most people would look at an envelope to drop in their giving for this, whatever the ministry is, now we have options that you can go online. I mean, we've always had those, but now they're more prevalent than ever. We have mission stores, we have impact stores, we have age level resources, podcast, and the best place to find all of this is at umcgiving.org. And if you can't find what you need, then you go to umcgiving@umcom.org.
So normally people celebrate and give through their local churches for these giving opportunities. Is there a way that people can give online or support these efforts?
They can. There is online giving, and that can be, each of the special Sundays can be found on umcgiving.org. And again, that's where you can go back and find out a little bit more what you're giving towards. And then you can find multiple options that have a giving button on umcgiving.org for each of those. You also can post that in your when you're doing your online worship service to either to offer some direct links, or you can just ask them to go to umcgiving.org. They can also write checks to the church, and the church can then take those and turn that in as a local church to collect those. For the advance, you can actually go on umcmission.org, and that will give you an opportunity to go in and donate to Core, to the advance, to any area that you particularly want to select and support. That's where you have a choice. You can also go online to youthservicefund.org, and give towards the youth service fund. And most of our churches have moved to online giving for everything. So make sure that you are specifying which special Sunday, if you're going to write that check, which one you're giving to. And for apportion funds, those need to go through your church. So speak to your church leadership and make sure that they know, hey, I want to make sure I'm giving to these funds, and they will they'll make sure that it gets in the proper place. So always go online and find things at umcgiving.org or at umcmission.org or youthservicefund.org.
Awesome. So as we kind of close and wrap up this session today, my final question is, are there any final thoughts you would like to share with those watching today?
I do. Generosity is something that I think a lot of people really get weary and nervous about in times of crisis like this. So I want to really kind of just nudge you that you continue to ask for things. You ask for people to give the offerings for your church, to continue that work that in the ministry that you're doing in your local church. But also don't take away that opportunity, because a lot of times people just feel like, man, if I ask right now in a bad crisis, nobody has the funds to do that. But you really don't know that. And giving is a joy that's just something that's unexplainable, and it can only be understood when you give something. So I definitely say, don't forget to do those asks. There's a lot of people that it's the only way they can give. Some can give their presence and go work, like right now in Tennessee, they can go help and work with that tornado disaster and help. And then some people literally can only write a check and they want to give. So I just always remind people, don't take that away from people. Allow them to do and serve God through giving.
Thank you, Brandy and Linda, for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us to help our church leaders educate and encourage their members to continue supporting their local churches and our connectional ministries through these times of physical distancing. I want to also thank everyone for being here with us today. I hope that this learning session was helpful to you in your church, that provided you some new solutions to help you promote giving outside of the offering plate. I'm sure you have some additional questions, so please email us at localchurchservices@umcom.org. That's localchurchservices@umcom.org. This video will stay on the Resource UMC and United Methodist Communications Facebook pages, the United Methodist Church's YouTube channel, and at resourceumc.org in case you need to rewatch or reference the content shared today again. We hope you will check out our other learning sessions coming out that will be added to this library of videos.